welcome to Outside Panorama. This is a show where we bring in people from the community who have made a difference. And today, the person laughing is a familiar face on campus because it's Ken Balsley, who has been around Lacey and Olympia and Tumwater for 73 years.
Actually, 71 years, because I moved here when I was 2.
Oh, well.
I am not a native. I tell everybody I am, but I moved here when I was 2 years old. So basically, I'm a native.
Well, then you can claim the same claim that I claim.
That's what I claim.
Okay. So anyway, this is Ken Balsley. And Ken, welcome. Thank you for coming by the studios today.
My pleasure. I love to talk.
Yeah. So this may be a tough show for you to watch because Ken and I both love to talk. So.
Yeah, you're supposed to be asking the question.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Okay. Let's get started, Ken, with your life. So you moved here at the age of 2. And
yep.
You lived in
East Olympia to start with, and then moved to Tumwater.
Okay.
Lived out on the Prime Road for a long time, which the freeway came and wiped out part of our property when they did it as a kid. I lived most of my life in Tumwater. I graduated from Olympia High School because there was no Tumwater High School then. There was only Olympia High School. Went in the military for about 6 years and got out and went to work for the state like everybody does. Decided I didn't like that. I went to college when Evergreen opened in 1971. I was in the first class at Evergreen State. Got my degree, in whatever you want to call it. I got my degree in basically communications. Went to work for a newspaper called the Olympia News, downtown Olympia. Eddie Alexander used to run that thing. That was Gary Alexander, the Supreme Court Justice's dad. Worked there for a while and went to work at the Lacey Leader newspaper out in Lacey, and I've been in Lacey ever since. Lived in Lacey now for 41 years.
41 years. Okay. So you
had 41.
You were living in Tumwater, and you had an interesting neighbor.
I had an interesting neighbor. It was Mr. Ulrich. I don't remember what the father's name was, but he was the father of Don Ulrich, who became Don Rich, who was a country and western singer. Now his dad was a barber, and right there in Southgate, in the corner there. And Don was a musician, well renowned here in Thurston County. He started out young. He was really a good musician, a guitar player, and a lot of other things. You look like you have a question.
Yeah, well, if I recall right, then he went up to Channel 13 in Tacoma and tied up with Buck Owens.
Well, Buck Owens was playing at the Gate 90 restaurant in Tacoma for a long time, and he had run into Donnie someplace along the line and realized that this kid was really talented, and so he had a show. I want to call it Country Jamboree, but I'm not sure if that's the right name, on Channel 13. It was at KSTW or something. I can't remember what it's called. Yes. And Don started playing with him there, and Buck gives a good deal of credit to Donnie for his success. Because if you ever listen to any vocals with Buck Owens, it's always Donnie that's singing in the background. Yes, and he had a band called the Buckaroos that also backed up Buck Owens. And I was at the Country Music Hall of Fame Museum here 2 years ago. And they have a whole big display on Don Rich from Tumwater, Washington, and the Buckaroos. So he was a big name. But I learned how to play. I didn't learn how to play, but Donnie got me interested in playing the guitar because he came down to the house, and I taught him how to play polka, and he taught me how to play the guitar. Neither one of us do it very well. Well, Donnie didn't play polka very well. I don't play the guitar very well. That's what I meant to say. Well,
that was interesting. I was back at the Country Music Hall of Fame 2 years ago, and they had them in. They had him in the Bakersfield section.
Yeah, he was. Now, because that's where the Bakersfield sound is known as, Buck Owens and Bakersfield sound. Yeah. But Donnie was his backup. And I remember Don was killed in a motorcycle crash, and I remember watching Buck Owens on the Tonight Show right after Donnie had been killed. He came out to start to sing, and he looked at the camera and he said, "Don, where are you? I need you."
Yeah.
But that was, and after that, his career just tanked.
Pretty much did. He tried to use his son as his backup, but it didn't work out as well.
Yeah, it tanked.
And I always like to clarify, Don Rich was no relation to Buddy Rich, who was Tammy Wynette's husband and very controversial.
But Don Rich was actually Don Ulrich, and he changed his name to Don Rich when he.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're in Tumwater, and then you got involved in the newspaper business.
I did get involved in the newspaper business. I was going to Evergreen State College, and brand new college. Nothing, you know, we sat on the floor. We didn't have any desk, or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, it was brand new. Everything was still wrapped up in bubble foil.
1969, 70.
1971 is when the college opened.
Okay.
For the first month of the college, we met in the state legislative building because we didn't have any place to meet. But I helped start the newspaper out there called the Cooper Point Journal, and I got interested in writing, and I realized that I could write, and so I had signed up the second year at Evergreen to take a writing program, and about a month before school was to open, I got notice that my class had been canceled because my instructor had been sent back to Ireland. He was guess he had some ties with the Irish Republican Army, and
I see.
so they sent him off, and so I had to find something to do. So I went to the newspaper office there, right on Capitol Way, right across from Sylvester Park, and Eddie Alexander was running the Olympia News, and I said, I need an internship here, and so I spent about 6 to 8 months working with Eddie there at the newspaper as an internship, and I took an internship at the Lacey Leader in Lacey, and then when I graduated, they hired me. So
that's cool.
That was my newspaper.
That's how you got into the business.
Yep.
Yeah. I had the opportunity of working at Chaos for about 8 months as their sports director in 1977, and they still were pretty basic at that time.
Have you been out there lately?
I took a refresher class about 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and a lot different.
Oh, they have a marvelous facility. I mean, they have a beautiful studio there. In fact, I think they have like 2 or 3 studios. It's really states put a lot of money into that into that radio program on the Chaos. I was there, and I did a radio program on Chaos, but I wasn't one of the founders of the radio station. But I did do in the early years. I did some programming.
Yeah.
I ran a trivia contest.
Well, it was a fun place to work for those of our listeners and viewers here. Chaos is an FM station, and it's been an Evergreen now for
89.3.
89 point
I'm
something.
guessing it's something. I think it's 89.3. I have a shirt that has it on there. I ought to go look at the shirt one of these times and see what it says.
So Ken Balsley is doing the newspaper business. How long are you in the newspaper business?
I was only in the newspaper business about 8 or 9 years or so. You know, and then I got fired, which is not uncommon for somebody who's controversial and likes to talk a lot. And went to work in the radio. I worked in a couple of different radio stations for a while. And then I got into public relations business. So for most of my career, I did public relations. I was a public relations for the Department of Transportation. For 18 months, I was the Director of Community Relations for the Evergreen State College. Yeah. And then I also was the Community Relations Director for the North Thurston Public Schools for 3 years. I went back to Evergreen, got my master's degree, and started my own public relations business. And one of my clients has been Panorama City. Since 1986, Panorama has been one of my clients. And I still do a little work for Panorama. Even though I'm basically retired from the business, you know,
still working.
I still help Panorama out, primarily by keeping them informed about what's happening in government. Anytime they need to be aware of some issues that's coming out that's going to impact Panorama, I kind of let them know those kind of things.
And you speak over in the Panorama Auditorium once every 2 or 3 years, basically on the historical subjects.
Yes, I have. I am a self-proclaimed expert on Lacey history.
I see.
You know, I'm not a historian, because I tell you, historians have to stick to the facts. Yeah. I'm just a guy that likes history, and I don't let facts get in the way of a good story.
And that's one of the things that's always attracted me to Ken, because I kind of have the same mentality.
Well, so we're really entertainers.
Yeah, that's what I always say.
We're entertainers. And the entertainers, do whatever they need to make people have a good time.
That's what I always said. I was never, I used to play and sing back in the days of the Hootenanny. And I always said that I was a performer. I was never a qualified artist. But okay, so
I play the guitar and sing.
yeah,
I have since I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
I'm not very good. I don't play the guitar good, and I don't sing good. But music is too important to be left to professionals. If you should always play and sing, even if you can't do it.
well,
You know? I mean, it's fun. It's enjoyable. Music's important to the world, and if you let professionals get a hold of it, it won't be fun anymore.
and I always said that was, if I wanted people to leave the room, I'd usually start to sing, and that would do it.
But what I noticed, seriously, I used to do a lot of performing in the early 80s around town.
Huh?
And what I found out is that there are professional musicians, people who are really good musicians.
Yep.
And there are people who are really good singers.
Yep.
But they're not entertainers.
No.
They're good singers, they're good musicians, but they get up there and they play and they don't communicate with the audience. I mean, it's just like the audience is supposed to be there to admire them. They don't communicate with the audience. And I always was good at communicating with the audience.
Yeah, I always maintained that. I always said that you knew when you were entertaining, if you had those good vibrations with the audience. Yeah. I don't know why some of these people take take chemicals, because a good feeling after a good concert, you hardly touch the stage when you walk off anyway. Why do you need some kind of substance?
I'm not going to get into those chemical things with you. But what I do know is that my dad was a semi-professional musician. He used to play the small lounges in Reno back when I was a kid. And he told me one time, he said, the key to being a good entertainer is knowing when to get off.
Yeah.
He said you always want to get off the stage when you're still at the top, and not before they want to keep saying, when's that guy going to get off the stage?
Yeah.
So I always try to limit my performance to 3 songs, and by then they've caught up with me, and I'm done. I'll bring my guitar one of these days, and we'll sing some songs.
Let's do that. Come in,
But
and you can sing and play, and I'll mouth the word lip sync. That's what they are. Lip sync.
But you've had a great career, Beryl.
Yeah.
I'm not used to being interviewed, I'm used to doing the interviewing,
Well, the apex of my career was in a bar in Potlatch, Idaho. So that's how far I went.
Yeah,
And we played there about 5 months, and there were so many brawls and people trashing stuff that we finally took our $1,000 worth of equipment, which in the 1960s was pretty good.
That's a lot of, yes.
And we took it and left because we were afraid it was going to get wrecked. So
Well, my brother had a band that used to play around in the taverns around town here, and he played a lot of time up in Shelton. And they always had chicken wire in front of the stage to stop all the beer bottles that people were throwing, and I mean, it was a rowdy. I mean,
and that's what entertainers get. We used to pass the can.
That's the way you pay your dues.
Yeah, we'd pass the can, and it would come back with maybe $15 worth of tips and about half full of beer.
And a lot of cigarette butts.
Okay, so you were in the newspaper business. What would you say was the most interesting story that you ever got to cover?
Oh my gosh, I can't really tell you.
Okay.
I can't tell you now. Maybe in a few months I'll be able to tell you the story. But it's a great story. It's about a. I can't tell you.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to keep you in suspense.
All right.
You're going to have me back here in
have
about
to
6 months, and I'll
okay.
tell you the story. It's going to knock your socks off.
You know,
It's about little old Lacey.
little old Lacey, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we already got him shaking in the control room, so.
They told us not to cuss either, didn't they?
So you got involved. You were in the Lacey Chamber of Commerce for a while.
I still am.
Are you?
I'm their oldest member. I've been there since 1971. I've been a member of the Lacey Chamber since 1970.
45
I
years.
take that back. They have one older member, and that's Gene Dolan. Gene Dolan's been a member since he was a charter member, but I'm the only one that continually goes to the council meetings, or to the chamber meetings.
And what kinds of things do you enjoy doing most with the chamber?
Well, I'm on their government affairs committee. It's a committee that keeps the board of directors of the chamber informed about political activities in the community. So what we tend to do is we tend to interview different candidates for public office, or we'll have somebody in to educate us on what the school district is doing and those kind of things. And then we inform the chamber board what's going on in the community and as far as politics go. And during the election season, we make recommendations to the chamber board as to what candidates they should endorse if they're going to endorse candidates. Now, most of the time, the chamber does not get involved in politics and doesn't make any endorsements. But sometimes we do. We have a PAC, a political PAC called the Lacey Business League. And sometimes the Lacey Business League does endorse candidates for office. And I'm the chair of that PAC and member of the Government Affairs Commission. That's the one that I like best, that I work with all the time in the Lacey Chamber. There's not many chambers that have political committees because business people are very leery of getting involved in partisan politics because they can lose a lot of customers. So they've created this committee that is separate and isolated from the chamber itself, but actually part of the chamber. So if there's any blame, they can always say, well, that's what the Government Affairs Committee did, and so on and so forth. I mean, it wasn't us.
Yeah.
So it works out pretty well.
I guess everybody that has had any familiarity with your presentation stuff knows that you're a conservative. Is that fair?
I was a Democratic PC for 20 years. I'm a Democrat. Come on now. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a conservative. I am a Henry Jackson Democrat. Now, there's a lot of people out here listening right now that knows what I mean when I say Henry Jackson Democrat. It's a conservative Democrat. Now, there aren't many of us left, but that's what I am. I'm a conservative Democrat. And one day, sometime back in the mid-'80s, I was standing there, and I looked around, and my party was way over here on the left. And I'm still standing in the middle of the road, and off here was the right was the Republicans, and I'm still right here, and that's where I've been.
That's where you've been.
Now, I don't know if you know, but maybe 8 or 10 years ago, the Olympian used to do surveys, and they asked people to name their favorite liberal and their favorite conservative.
Yeah.
And I made both lists. So that'll tell you where I am. So all you Henry Jackson Democrats out there, there's still hope for you.
So the story that I got to tell, Ken, is 1972.
Okay.
And I went to the Democratic precinct meeting, and this was in a reporter's house, actually, from the Daily Olympian. And we went through and we took the vote, and there were 30 of us in the room, and 24 of them were McGovern, and 6 of us were Henry Jackson people.
That's when the party went to the hell.
Well, essentially they said, okay, you all have the right for your own opinions. And then he went over and opened the door and invited the 6 of us to leave, and we did. So
It was that McGovern campaign that took over the Democratic Party, and it has continued to move left ever since then. And that's poor Jackson Democrats who were always for the working poor. The hard-working guy, the business owner, the laborer, the longshoreman, the carpenter, the plumber. All those people, were no longer represented.
Henry Jackson was, people were attracted to Henry because when he talked to you, like if you went back to D.C. and lobbied, he'd pull up a stool right in front of you and he talked to you. He didn't glance around and talk to his secretary while you were talking. He talked to you, and people liked him.
I thought you didn't get involved in politics at Panorama.
Yeah.
Come on, Merrill, now. You're leading us down this path here.
Well,
We're going to get in trouble, both of us. You know that, don't you?
Well, they're not going to ask me to go speak over at the auditorium. So.
I have spoken to the Republican group in the past. I've never been asked by the Democratic group to come and speak here at Panorama, but I have been invited by the Republican group to come and talk. And I told them, I said, you're a dying party. If you don't change your ways, if you don't, you're on the ash heap of history. Well, I don't know if it took me for my word, but you see where they're going now.
They don't have any
right down the tubes.
Koch brothers to support them like that.
Well, no. Did you see the interview at 60 Minutes with the Koch brothers?
I didn't see that, but I read the book about them.
Well, yeah, a book about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to remember who wrote those books. One of the Koch brothers claims to be a good conservative Democrat, and he's upset with the way government's being run by both parties.
Yeah. Well,
but he wants a smaller government. What his goal is.
A lot of us are upset by both parties and the way things are going.
Hey, let's change the subject.
Okay, before
we get too deep in, well, we're already too deep.
Yeah.
We can't get out of this now.
So we talked a little bit before we started here on the interview about a book I think that's probably had some influence on both our lives, and that's a book by Gordon Newell called Rogues, Buffoons, and Statesmen.
Yes.
and I know you have it, and I've read it 3 or 4 times.
I think I read it once.
Well,
So you're more of an expert on that book than I am.
it's a good book because whether everything is true to the facts or not, it gives you a good outline, 120-year history of
It's
the
a
city
20
of
year
Olympia.
of state government.
Yeah,
It's a history of the state legislature primarily. Yeah.
and so you have an interest. How did you get interested in the history of the area?
I've always been interested in history. When I was a kid, I used to live out in the rural areas of Tumwater, out on the Pine Road, and in the summer, the bookmobile would come by. Every 2 weeks, a bookmobile would come by. And I could hardly wait for that bookmobile to get there, and I would go out I had to walk about a mile maybe it's only a half mile. I had to walk about, I don't want to exaggerate too much, about a half mile to get to the bookmobile. And they would allow you to get so many books. And I would load the book back to my house, and I could hardly wait for them to come again. I just loved history, always have loved history, loved biographies of people, not even important people, just, and that's how I got an interest in history. So when I got out here to Lacey, and I realized this is a brand new city, and they were just starting to make history on their own. So I got involved, and I was the first president of the Lacey Historic Commission. I founded the Lacey Historic Society as one of the founding members of Lacey Historic Society. I've been involved in history for a long time. I'm the official historian for the Lacey Chamber, and I'm the official historian for the Lacey Rotary Club. But basically, I just collect historic information. And you know now that the city of Lacey is getting ready to celebrate their 50th birthday next year.
Next year, yeah.
In 2016, they'll be 50 years old. And the city has started a city birthday committee group, which thankfully I'm on that committee. I was on the Historic Commission for 13 years, and they finally said, time for you to go. You're getting to be historic yourself, so it's time to move on. But so I'm on the city birthday committee. We have a lot of activities planned. We're getting them all firmed up now. The chair of that committee, by the way, is our own Howard Burton here at Panorama.
I was just going to say that.
Howard Burton is the chair of that committee, and so it's always a pleasure to work with Howard. He has a good grasp on how to manage situations, and so
He does.
we got a lot of activities planned for the future.
And just for our listeners' sake, one of our future outside panoramas is going to be interviewing Howard about the 50th anniversary.
Oh, good,
Yeah,
good,
so we're
good.
gonna be
And you ought to
talking-
get his daughter on, Sierra. Sierra is the executive director of the Lacey Chamber, and she's on that committee as well. So maybe you ought to get father and daughter down at the same time.
That would be good. That would
So
be
think
good.
about that.
So, since we're talking about the 50-year, excuse me, we'll have the historical. Let's see, it was 1966 when the city was incorporated.
December 5th, 1966.
December 5th, yeah. Which-
And that was the second try. They had tried it before in 1963 to incorporate, and they lost. It didn't. The voters said no.
Huh.
But the city of Olympia decided they didn't like the fact that there might be a city of Lacey, and they were building a shopping center at the time too,
Yeah.
in South Sound Center.
Mall.
So Olympia came out and they annexed a good portion of what was going to be Lacey, all the Phones Road property stuff, and they annexed all of Martin Way, one lot down all the way to College Street. So things like the Safeway store and Sherry's and a lot of those places are not in Lacey.
Nope.
They're in the city of Olympia. So, but what happened then was that the Lacey Volunteer Fire Department got really upset that they were taking some of their fire area away from them. So there was the volunteer firefighters from Lacey that joined with the business community, the Lacey Chamber and others, to do another incorporation move. So in 1965 they ran an election, and it was approved by the voters. But that wasn't the end of it. The next year, the city of Olympia ran an issue to annex all of Lacey into Olympia. And it had to be approved by 50% in both cities, and it failed in both cities. So from then on, Lacey was a separate corporate entity, and there's a lot of stories I can tell you in some other time down the road about the struggle with Olympia for the city just to survive.
Well, I'm
They
sure
were touch and go.
a lot of people are familiar with the more recent T-shirts that were produced.
You mean
About
Lacey Sucks?
Lacey Sucks.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the Lacey Chamber came up with "I Love Lacey" shirts, like "I Love Lucy" with the big heart.
Yeah.
So So there was a battle of the T-shirts.
The
for a
battle
while
of the
there.
T-shirts.
In fact, I had one of those shirts the other day, and I just turned it over to the Lacey Museum.
Aha.
Now, if you don't know it, we have a museum here in Lacey. It's on Lacey Street, which is in the old Lacey Historic area over behind St. Martin's College. Right, and there's signs to it, and it's a beautiful museum. If you've never been to the Lacey Museum, you need to go. It's open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 10 to 3. And you should take an opportunity to go over there. You can learn a lot about the city of Lacey and all of Lacey's history.
And primarily because Lacey was a destination point for a lot of tourists during the early years of the last century.
Back in the 20s, the teens in the 20s, right when automobiles were getting ready to be found, Lacey became a very destination resort area because of all the lakes around.
Oh.
And I think we were just given the
Just
call.
given
weren't we?
So
that we have to stop.
we got to stop for now, but we've got to have it back because there's so much area that you and I haven't talked about, Ken. So I want to thank you for coming and appreciate you spending this time mostly cajoling with me.
Okay.
But I did want to say that was important for me because on December 3rd of 1966 is the day I moved to Olympia. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
a little bit of trivia.
If you said you moved to Lacey, I would have thought something about it. But you said I moved to Olympia.
Olympia.
I'm sorry. I feel sorry for you.
We'll have to talk about that because that was the
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Had a good time.
Appreciate that. Ken Balsley, person outside of Panorama making a difference for those of us on campus.